Okay, so you can take photos like this and this, even if you've only got a couple of hours a week to go out and shoot. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can take pro level photos, even if you are a successful, busy person who is low on time. So last week I was in the Landscape Mastery community and there was a question from one of the students in there asking how to consistently capture professional level landscape images when he doesn't have much time to go out and shoot. And he's an executive at a technology company, so he doesn't have the ability to go away for weeks at a time to some fancy landscape photography workshop and shoot there. Instead, he's got to shoot in the evenings or the weekends, and he thought that this was stopping him from reaching his photography potential. And then I explained, well, I'm in a similar situation as well. I'm the managing director of salesman.com. And now that I'm running this live training program over at Photography Explained, I'm also really only going out on the weekend because I'm so busy training and coaching people in the evenings. Yet with all of that, I'm still creating professional level images every single month. So how do I do it? Well, for the students in the program, I wrote them a big, long guide on how to get it done, but I thought it'd be useful to share this process here as well. So the secret to getting professional level results consistently, even when you can only shoot for a small amount of time each week or each month, well, you get that by reducing your reliance on luck. Because, well, you see, a lot of the elements that go into a professional looking landscape image seemingly come down to luck, right? It's finding amazing light, visiting beautiful landscape locations at the right time, and then stumbling onto amazing, beautiful compositions. But what I found when I paid for some mentoring from some of the world's top landscape photographers is that they tend to create their own look. So I started asking them how they go about doing it, and their answers were absolutely fascinating. And so if you're busy, you're stuck shooting weekends, and you're wondering how you're ever going to get high-level landscape results, well, don't worry. You're going to learn how the best in the world tip the odds in their favor, starting with how they predict the light. Okay, so right, what is the difference between these two photos? Well, one of them glows with beautiful golden hour light, and the other one looks a bit flat and boring, right? And the difference between them obviously is the light. And the interesting thing here is that it's pretty easy to predict when the most epic light is going to be there for you to go out and shoot it. Let me quickly explain, right? So the first thing you're going to look at is whether there's going to be enough gaps in the clouds at your location for the light to even get through in the first place. And I do this in two separate steps. So first off, I check an app called Clear Outside to look at my cloud cover. And if it's 100% low, 100% medium, and 100% high cloud, I'm not even going to bother going out 9 times out of 10 at that point. But if Clear Outside is showing that there are going to be some breaks in the cloud, then I move on to step 2, which is looking at a radar app like Windy.com. There's a bunch of them out there, but Windy.com is the one that I use. Now, using an app like Windy, I'm looking to see where the gaps in the clouds are in relation to the direction that I'm going to be shooting in. Often I'm looking for the conditions that create crepuscular light rays, and crepuscular rays, otherwise known as God rays or beams of light, shafts of light coming into the frame that you're shooting. These are formed when clouds get in the way of light that's beaming out from the sun, blocking parts of that light from our view. The shafts of light that make it through these gaps in the clouds give us these crepuscular rays in the best scenario, or the very worst, it gives us this beautiful, soft, glowing light. So on the Windy app, I'm looking for broken up clouds in the direction I'm going to be shooting, rather than big carpets of clouds that are just going to block the sunlight altogether. Okay, so with that, we predicted the chance of some crepuscular rays or soft light glowing in our scene, and we've dramatically increased our chances of capturing a professional level image. But there's one more factor that can turn good light, pretty amazing light, into absolutely breathtaking, award-winning light, and I'm going to explain it right now. Okay, so, well, there's a reason that most professional landscape photographers tend to shoot in the hours around sunset and sunrise. And that's because it's the time of the day that we get the most beautiful colours of light, both in the sky and then being bounced off water in our foreground, all over the place, right? And these times around sunset and sunrises, they deliver a change in the colour of the landscape due to the way that light from the sun enters and then scatters through our Earth's atmosphere. Because as light travels towards us from the sun and enters the Earth's atmosphere, it hits things in the atmosphere like gas and molecules and dust and even pollution, right? And when the light hits these molecules, blue frequencies of light are scattered, which then leaves the light hitting our scene or our sky looking red and then a beautiful orange and glowing tones. Now, this is happening throughout the day, but importantly at sunset or sunrise, due to the position of the sun, the light is passing through and traveling through more of our atmosphere, and so more of that blue light is scattered, and that is what creates these beautiful tones around golden hour. So how do we increase our chances of shooting amazing colors in the sky? Well, you just got to aim to be at your location and be ready to shoot a couple of hours either side of sunrise or sunset. And so if you predict great light and you only go out when the great light is there, and you're selective with the time of day that you shoot, so you're getting great colors of light in the sky and in your foreground and in your scene, then you're gonna obviously dramatically increase your chances of capturing professional level images, even when you're short on time, right? But what if you feel like you live just too far away from any landscape location that's even worth shooting in the first place, and you're just not going to physically have the time to travel there and travel back? Well, the answer to this one is really simple, but really, really powerful. So I live in a city in the north of the UK called Leeds. It's a cool city, I love it. I could choose to live anywhere really, but I've decided to live here. But, well, it's not really surrounded by mountains, epic waterfalls, or anything like that. But within a 40-minute drive of my home, I've recently taken these images. And the point of me sharing this is that I've not had anyone come into my training program thus far who, after 5 or the most 10 minutes of running through what I'm just about to show you, hasn't been able to find a bunch of local landscape to shoot close to their home and then go out and take a bunch of really lovely images. And for the landscape photographer who's short on time, this can be an absolute game changer. It means that you can wake up in the morning, look at the weather conditions, get confirmation that you're in for some amazing light, and then pop out before work, or do the same in the evenings, or just pop out at the weekend to capture that local scene. And honestly, finding local landscapes to photograph is often the difference between getting one nice image every year from the fancy landscape photography workshop that you're planning on attending and traveling to, and the difference between that and capturing multiple beautiful images every single month. So that leads to the question, obviously, how do we find these local landscapes to shoot? Well, last weekend I wanted to visit somewhere new and I went through the following steps. I opened Google Maps, I turned on satellite terrain, I then looked for any areas of elevation or woodland or water that I've not visited before. Within, for me, it's about a 60-minute radius of my home that I'm happy to travel back and forth to. Then I pick up the little yellow man, dangle him around on the screen over the location to see if there's any places that I could drop him. If I can drop him, I'm then greeted with a 3D view of that location. And not rocket science, right? I just look around and see if there's any potential there. And I thought this spot in particular looked interesting and was worth investigating further. So I then opened suncalc.org and I just drag till I get to the right location. So my location's on the screen, and I'm looking and trying to check out which direction the sun is going to be rising and where it's going to be setting. And this website also then gives me all the times I need to be able to predict what times of the day are likely to have the best light. So it gives me the light for golden hour and blue hour and all that good stuff. Now, this specific location has the light hitting it from the side at sunrise, so I penciled in this is a location for a sunrise shoot, and then head over to Google Maps to look for somewhere to park. And then finally, I go to the Ordnance Survey website, I log into there, and I find a footpath that's going to get me as close as possible from the parking spot to my location. And that is basically it, right? Finding this location, parking, the path, everything took me 10 minutes tops. I then waited and just monitored the Clear Outside app and the Windy app until the light was likely to be decent. And then I popped over there for a morning last weekend and I captured a couple of nice images when I was out there. And I was back home for a bacon butty for lunch. It was as simple as that, right? So if you can predict the best light and you found a location that you can travel to in the short windows that you've got to shoot, what else do you need to consistently capture beautiful landscape images, a whole bunch of beautiful landscape images every single month? Well, the final thing that stops keen, serious amateur photographers from capturing professional level images when they're short on time is your camera gear. Not really. Your camera gear has nothing to do with any of this. If you spent less time watching camera gear review content, you've probably got more time to go out and shoot. No, the final piece of the puzzle here to taking more higher quality photos in the limited time that you have is having a framework that allows you to find and capture amazing compositions no matter where you're shooting. So let's take a look at the composition capturing framework next. Now, for anything that isn't a abstract landscape image like this, and I'm being consciously purposeful here, I call them abstract images because I refuse to use the stupid fancy term of intimate landscapes. Well, then the framework that we want to follow to compose a compelling image is pretty simple. It's background, foreground, tie them together, and then balance the elements. So let's break down each one of these steps and let's make it all really practical, and I'll give you some examples as well. So firstly, we want to focus on the background. Why is that? Well, because there are less backgrounds in the landscape, and so it most often makes sense to commit to the background and then find the other layers to put in front of it. Then we want to lock in a foreground, and the goal of a foreground is to add depth to your image, add interest to your image, and typically give the viewer a starting point to enter the photo so they know what order they should be consuming the photo in. Now we want to tie our background and our foreground together, and there are a few ways we can go about doing this, which I'll explain now. Firstly, we've got lines. So straight lines drag the viewer's gaze peacefully around the scene. It's a nice way to transition from one place to another. Then we've got diagonal lines, and diagonal lines add a lot of energy and tension to an image. Then we've got shapes, and these shapes can be points of interest themselves, like a river, a lake, or whatever it is, or they can be used to pull the viewer's gaze towards our background. And then there are curves, and curves are great for organically, like really gently and naturally separating parts of an image while still pulling the viewer's eye from the foreground to the background. And what if you can't find a background, but you found a really beautiful, lovely foreground or a subject for your photo? Well, you can look at adding negative space around your subject to create a background, and that ties everything together as well. So when you've got a background, a foreground, and something tying them together, it's now time to position everything within your frame. And you kind of got to do this in an interesting way, right? And this is often what separates a kind of amateurish photo to something that looks really, really impressive. And there are a couple of ways and a couple of rules to go about doing this to position the elements in your shot. First off, we've got the cliche one here. You can use the rule of thirds. And this often leads to a bold, striking image, but also it almost reduces complexity. It can make things look a little bit simple. You can also place your subject or your foreground in the center of the frame, which creates real impact and works with high contrast scenes like this one. Next up, it's important when positioning the elements around your shot that you keep your frame edges clean. And I'm happy to just clone out or use AI removal tools to get stuff around your frame. Some people are really picky about this and they want to do everything in camera. Either way, anything that's around the outside of the frame can be really, really distracting, and any lines leading outside the frame can pull your viewer straight out of the image. Now, the more complex your shot, the more elements there are in your scene, the more difficult this can become, and this is why woodland photography can be so difficult to get right. And then most of the time, you should avoid elements within your photograph that are touching each other, that are crossing over each other. Again, it just looks really messy. And this is often if you're doing a mountain scene with lots of rocks in front of you, or again, woodland, or anything with a little bit more complexity than like the tree with a negative space above it. This is often where the real skill of landscape composition comes in. And for me, I've just got to really slow down. I've got to look at the scene. I've just got to pay attention to it. And making tiny adjustments to your composition before you commit to it is really where you get this nailed. And for anything that isn't an abstract landscape shot, that's all you really got to focus on to get a really stunning composition. So now that you know how to shoot great images, even when you don't have much time, click this video up here to learn the 3 sliders that you're using inside Lightroom that are ruining the hard-earned images that you've been capturing. Because, right, what's the point in finding time to go out and shoot and capture these images if you're just going to ruin them in the edit?